Have you seen this? A little green slab of truth on the wildlife of Gumby creator Art Clokey.
Welcome to Have You Seen This?
The world's only podcast about obscure, overlooked, and misbegotten media.
All discussions will be spoiler heavy.
You have been warned.
This show would not be possible without the support of our patrons. If you would like to support our show, join us at patreon.com/haveyouseenthis. For just $5 a month, get access to our Discord and all 3 episodes every month covering movies you've never heard of, or maybe wish you hadn't. It's, life is a cycle, and one must always keep moving. It's just the nature of the Dharma, the Gumby Dharma.
Yes, life is art, and art is God, and God is the universe, and that's what Gumby Dharma from 2006 wants us to know.
Yeah, Gumby Dharma is fucking deep, man. And it's a strange, melancholy little piece, which I think we may have linked before when we talked about Gumby the movie, or I should say Gumby 1, a few episodes back, but I will link it again. And did you know, Tim, that the filmmaker died shortly after completing production on the film?
Yeah, Gumby doesn't want to leave anyone behind to tell his story. Gumby leaves a trail of dead behind him. That's so dark considering what this documentary is already about. Because, yeah, when we reviewed Gumby 1, I think as an aside, I'm like, Art Clokey has to have lived a wild life and thought we should talk about that. And sure enough, the guy contains multitudes, or at least is multitude adjacent.
I had forgotten about all the tragedy in the life of Art Clokey.
It is wild.
Yeah. So you can kind of see why Gumby is so comforting. And we touched upon that a little bit in the Gumby movie episode.
Yes, it has what you might describe as gentle humor.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that was one of our biggest complaints about Gumby 1 is how low stakes it was.
Well, as you described it, it was kind of permanent low stakes drama.
Yeah. Which if you're into, that's fine. Like maybe you're a kid who doesn't need, everything to be Vagabond or I don't know, Enter the Void or any of the other movies that we've reviewed on this.
That's true. And
yeah, because you're 6.
Yes.
And you like talking clay as entertainment.
Or you're mentally 6 anyway.
Okay, true. Yeah.
Yeah, but
guilty.
Yeah. But but as we said before, Gumby is perennially popular for that reason and so many others, and as it turns out, it's a rich clay vein if you look into the life of his creator, Mr. Art Clokey.
Not born Art Clokey, like the first twist in this unexpected life.
Yeah, and that is wrenchingly sad how his life started.
Right, yeah. If you wanted to, think of, just what's one, tragic backstory you could think of, just, for any character, where, I'm going to give them texture. I'm going to give them, one tragic thing in their history. And Art Clokey just kind of, scoffs at that and is like, try, 4.
Yeah. Things basically ended up okay-ish for him, but there was a lot of pain before that.
Right, yeah. So you can kind of see, and I don't know if it's kind of the cart and the horse here, because he was raised in what seemed like a spiritual family. His dad went off to a revival, at which time his mother left him for the guy who was renting a room from them.
Who was a cop. Even better.
Yeah, so ACAB, but, they gave us Gumby, so... But yeah, there is, I don't know if it's just a type of person or if you're raised in a particular environment. I'm sure some of our listeners have had the misfortune of being raised in an environment such as that. But yeah, it is a religious, spiritual environment that tends to kind of color people's perceptions for the rest of their life, because even with his dad out of the picture, his dad died a year later.
Yes.
Ooh, yeah, after Art Clokey as an 8-year-old, after his parents split up and his dad died and he went to go live in an orphanage. Like, motherfucker.
Yes, because his mother explicitly chose the new husband over her own son. She took Art's sister with her.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, and Clokey explains it a little bit in the documentary. He's remarkably forthcoming. He's pretty much like, yeah, like her new husband, like every time he looked at me, he saw my dad. And he was like, It's me or the kid.
Yeah, like no one's really a villain in any of this, but man, like people are complicated.
Yeah, and it's a really despicable thing to do to a child.
Yeah.
To be like, I like the new model better, kid. Like, get scarce. And it did happen that Clokey was adopted by a very kind family.
Yeah, he's adopted by a doctor, and the doctor was like, hey, we like going on vacations, and I like making home movies with my little film camera. And Art Clokey's like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, like his adoptive father was an early adopter of camera equipment, like personal camera equipment. And so there's all this like 8mm footage of them on vacation, and they went to like all kinds of crazy places all over the world.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I initially took for granted because, you know, I like watching old like 8mm home movies, you know, stuff from the 50s where it's like, well, there is a bingo card for it where it's like Disneyland, Monument Valley, you know, Yellowstone, stuff like that. And I'm like, wow, this is just what people did in the 50s. And it's like, no, this is what people who could afford an 8mm film camera did in the 50s. Like, these were rich people. Like, oh, okay. I understand now. But yeah, you can see, like, for what a chaotic life Art Clokey's upbringing was, you can see why a lot of the Gumby stuff is very comforting. And, you know, like I said in our Gumby 1 episode, very low stakes. Like, Gumby is a pure-hearted figure, even if, you know, I'm not sure about that Pokey or that Prickle.
Well, they're lower animals.
Well, Pokey is very cynical, which I think comes across. And, you know, Prickle is very skeptical. Mm-hmm. So, you know, they are the different, you know, they're the ego and the superego, where, you know, Gumby is more of the id in all this. The wholesome core of what, you know, Art Clokey aspires to. However, you know, he is caught in this sort of matrix of tragedy.
And it's interesting how his son, Joseph, described it in the documentary, because as Tim pointed out, you have the two aspects of Art, which are Pokey and Prickle, and then the aspirational figure, the hero, Gumby, which really sums it up. And you can poke fun at Gumby, or indeed like any form of media that centers around a kind of quote unquote typical American nuclear family, you know, Gumbo, Gumba, Gumby, and sometimes Minga. Mm-hmm. But it probably came from a yearning within its creator for that stability, because to have your life disrupted like that at that formative age, like to go and live in a foster home or an orphanage. Right.
Yeah, I could see his work being informed by that, where it's like, I would just like things to be as nice as they were when I was 8.
Yeah, and we kind of poked fun at this in Gumby the movie.
Not having suffered quite nearly as many sort of trials as Art Clokey has.
Right, well, at the end, like, I don't think you see Gumby's mom until the end of the movie, when she arrives with cookies. And you made some joke about how, like, well, you know, when you're 8, that's basically how you see mom, is like a provider of cookies. And my joke was, well, it's also a nice little wry comment on the invisibility of women's labor, which is also a thing in Art Clokey's life.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, you can get 2 extra episodes every month, plus access to our growing catalog of reviews for just $5 a month by going to patreon.com and searching for Have You Seen This?